Good morning and welcome to another edition of Plugged Into Long Island on Long Island's #1 rock station, 102.3 WBAB, and Long Island's #1 hit music station, 106.1 BLI. My name is Syke, and today we're here with John DeIeiso from the NEFCU organization, Chief Information Officer. Is that correct, John?
That is correct, Syke.
Now, what exactly is NEFCU, and what exactly is the Chief Information Officer of NEFCU?
Well, NEFCU is a credit union based in Westbury, Long Island. We are a financial institution that is not-for-profit. Basically, we're a banking institution, but we're better than a bank because we provide more value to our members because we are a not-for-profit organization.
So you're basically like a bank, just better.
Just like a bank, but better.
And what ways are you better? I know you mentioned that first reason, but what other ways, if there are people out there listening right now that aren't familiar with NEFCU or have heard of it? For example, I've heard of NEFCU, but I've never thought, well, what is NEFCU? I always just thought it was another bank, but it's not just another bank, correct?
Well, really, as a not-for-profit institution, we are really able to give back our profits in the forms of better loan rates and better deposit account rates to our members. So basically, we can provide value back to our members because we don't have stockholders to answer to. We don't have the next quarter's profit to make to hit the street.
And how long has NEFCU been around?
We've been around since 1938.
Wow. And is it strictly Long Island based? Is it New York based? What is it?
Yes, we're based on Long Island, and our membership that we serve is Nassau and Suffolk counties.
Okay, all right. So you're here today to tell me a little bit about what happened in terms of the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy and how you were there for your customers to benefit them in the rebuilding process. But before we get into that, I want to know, what are your daily job responsibilities in your day-to-day operations at NEFCU?
Well, as Chief Information Officer, I'm supposed to know everything, but unfortunately, I have a staff that does a great job of that. So I am in charge of the technology at the credit union, as well as the commercial and residential lending operations, special projects, our call center, and several other operational areas of the credit
You probably
union.
also handle their Twitter, I'm assuming, right?
That's actually in our marketing area. As working for a smaller institution, a community-based institution, sometimes you have to wear a few hats.
Oh, there you go. Okay, but you're not scared to wear those hats, correct?
Not at all.
All right, so let's get to a more serious issue. Of course, Hurricane Sandy ravaging Long Island. It's been about, I'd say, almost a month now. It's crazy to think. It feels like it was just yesterday. I know I was without power for 13 days. Were you without power too?
I was without power 9 days.
Well, okay, all right. How did you get by in the 9 days?
Oh, it was just fine. I mean, when you hear about all of what our friends and neighbors went through and some of the destruction that Sandy did, being without power is the least of it, I'm sure.
And we were talking earlier off mic. You were telling me some of your employees actually were also affected, true?
Yes, we had several employees who were affected by Sandy. Again, being a local institution, our friends and neighbors were affected, just as all of our listeners. So we certainly understand the impact that Sandy has had on Long Island, just from our own personal experience. So.
Now let's get to the reason you're here. Of course, Hurricane Sandy, as I mentioned, ravaging Long Island, leaving many Long Islanders without power for days, without homes, a lot of destruction in and around the Long Island area. What is NEFCU doing to benefit its customers in this times of need?
Well, we really immediately realized that we were in a unique position to help our members financially. Being a Long Island-based institution, again, we understand the needs of our members. And the first thing that was coming out a couple of days after the storm was really people needing funds immediately, being able to have access to low-cost loans, to have access to information regarding if their home has been destroyed or damaged, if their vehicle's been damaged, being able to provide that information out there to create some bridge loans out there for when they're waiting for insurance payments to come out. So we recognized that immediately and really put into place as much as we could to help our members through this time.
It sounds like such an incredible operation to run day to day, but now with the aftermath of Superstorm Sandy, it seems like it's even more impossible to run an operation like this. What was the planning going into this? I mean, because there were a lot of people that would say this was going to be the worst storm we ever experienced. There were a lot of people saying it's not going to be that bad. It's not going to hit us as hard as everybody's thinking. What was the planning process in the days or weeks leading up to the storm for you guys?
Well, when we hear about a storm coming, we always expect the worst. We have to have our disaster recovery plans ready, be ready to technically respond. So we did prepare in the days Sandy coming up for a technical recovery. We wanted to make sure that we had full operations of our system in the case of power outage. And everything went very smoothly. Our members always had access through their money throughout the storm. If it was 4 a.m, right after the storm had just passed, and you went to use your NEFCU debit card, that was working right away. We made sure our members had their funds via the ATM. We were in the next day, even with a skeleton crew, even though our branch operations weren't open. We had a crew that was in there making sure that our members' direct deposits were posted properly, and all the systems were up and running so that when we resumed operations the next day, everything was perfect. So from a technical standpoint, we were prepared.
You're listening to another edition of Plugged Into Long Island on Long Island's #1 rock station, 102.3 WBAB and 106.1 BLI, Long Island's #1 hit music station. My name is Syke. I'm here today with John DeIeiso, the Chief Information Officer from NEFCU, of course, talking about the aftermath of Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm Sandy. Not really sure what we're calling it nowadays, but it's gone, it's past, it's done its damage. Now it's time to rebuild. You mentioned, of course, you guys were there at your operation even during the storm, so you guys hadn't shut down at all.
Well, our branches, that was a Monday night when the storm hit. We closed early on that Monday in preparation for the storm, and our branches were closed for member traffic on Tuesday. Pretty much all of Long Island was shut down at that point.
Right.
But our back office operations were up and running. We had the critical function staff in to ensure that members had access to their funds and that the operation was continuous.
Now, of course, you mentioned before you had seen both customers in Nassau and Suffolk County coming to you for aid. Did you notice any specific areas more so than others? I mean, Long Beach was one of the areas that was really hit hard. The Bayshore area, Port Jeff. Did you notice? Was it a broad spectrum of areas that were coming for your help, or did you notice certain areas needed a little bit more than others?
Sure. Well, the South Shore certainly has been hit the hardest from what we're hearing from our members' perspective, and of course what we see on the news. That makes sense. So we certainly had spattering of members throughout the Middle Island who had trees down on their homes or their cars, or were looking for some assistance, or even were just looking for funds to get a generator, or because they wanted to potentially skip a loan payment because they put some funds out to put new food in the fridge, and because they had to get that generator because they had damage to their roof. But the hardest hit areas were really the Long Beach, East Rockaway, Oceanside. We hear from a lot of members. We're a heavy mortgage lender in those areas, so we're hearing from our members in those areas who really were kind of crying out for help at that point for information and for funds to really help them get through.
And it's so important. You mentioned, of course, having to put off maybe some payments due to the fact that you need to buy a generator or you need to buy supplies. I know for me, it was important seeing my loan organizations coming in and letting me know, hey, it's okay if you miss a payment, or I had one actually that let me know, hey, you're late. And when I called them up the next day and I said, listen, I've just been so scatterbrained. I've been without power. It's not that I didn't have the money or I had to put it somewhere else. I just completely forgot. And it's funny how every month you make a payment on the same day and you never forget no matter what's going on in your life. But then something like this comes along and it just completely turns your world upside down. How important is it for you as a business, not just as a business, but also as a family with not only your employees, but your members as well, to give back a little bit and say, hey, it's okay, we're here for you, we understand the issues, and we're going to get you through it no matter how long it takes?
Absolutely. One of the things we realized immediately after the storm, once we had our technical recovery and we made sure all those operations were in place, it was really turning to, wow, this storm was really worse than anyone expected from a damage standpoint. What can we do as an organization to help our community that we've been in for many years? And really, people started reaching out to us right away and thanking us for the programs that we put in place. One of the things we did was immediately suspend all fees on our checking accounts for NSF items, non-sufficient fund items, checks that were coming in where there wasn't enough payment there. We went through really a lot of exception processing where we paid many items we would not normally have paid because funds weren't there. If we would look and see that a direct deposit was due to come in and maybe their payroll didn't get processed, we would make those exceptions and pay those items. Another thing we did was we worked with the school districts on payroll processing, and for a period of time, the school district employees weren't able to report to their jobs. So we had 6 districts in particular that we weren't sure on their payroll day if they were planning on paying their employees
right.
or not because they weren't in the office and we weren't receiving their payrolls. We went ahead and processed their payroll anyway based on their last pay period to make sure that our members had access to their funds. And then when the schools were back in operation the next week, we made some phone calls. We made sure that we got our funds.
Of course,
but basically, we laid out those